Hey explorers, it's Brian here. Now you may remember that Eastern Europe could also be considered Western Asia, or even Central Eurasia. And you may also remember that the Soviet Union dominated this region for a large part of the 20th century. Now though, the resilient states which emerged are trying to block out that time in history. Today's learning objective is to be able to analyze the people and culture of the nations of Eastern Europe, including population statistics, ethnicity, religion, language, government, and economics. More and more, these nations are on the rise again and have reason to look to the future with excitement. Their rich heritage is once again able to shine brightly and blend with the modern 21st century world. So let's go, explorers. It's time to learn more about Eastern European people and culture. Population. As a reminder, Eastern Europe contains Russia, Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia. Generally speaking, the Eastern European region has a lower population density than the rest of Europe. Quick Russia review, everyone, and here it is. Russia is big. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's dig in. Russia has a higher population than the other 9 countries combined, at over 145 million people. However, at just 23 people per square mile, it has the second smallest population density in Europe, behind Iceland. By comparison, the world has an average population density of 129 people per square mile. Poland is one of the larger countries in this region, and it also has the second largest population, at nearly 38 million people. At 320 people per square mile, it is also rather densely populated. Speaking of Poland, if you know someone of Polish descent living in your hometown, you are not alone. Due to brutal Nazi and Soviet invasions, many Poles fled their homeland over the course of the 20th century. They made homes in other places, including New York and Chicago. Today, 20 million ethnic Poles live outside of their homeland. The life expectancy in Eastern Europe is lower compared to other parts of Europe. Half of Eastern European countries have a life expectancy under 75 years. Interestingly enough, women in Russia live for 78 years while men only 68, among the largest gaps in the world. Some speculate that this is due in part to high rates of alcoholism in the area, especially among Russian males. Most Eastern European countries are experiencing a decline in population. After the fall of the Soviet Union, birth rates dropped dramatically and the death rate spiked. Additionally, many people have left the former Soviet states in search of greater economic opportunity. Latvia, for instance, has lost approximately 1/4 of its population since 1990. One notable exception to this trend is Azerbaijan. Its population has increased steadily since 1960, from 4 million to 10 million people. Rather than leaving, many people are migrating to Azerbaijan. Eastern Europe is also becoming increasingly urban. Internal migration, or movement within a country, is bringing more people away from rural areas and towards the cities in search of better jobs. Russia, surprise, has 2 of the top 5 largest cities in Europe, Moscow at over 10 million people and St. Petersburg at 5 million. Baku, Azerbaijan, Kiev, Ukraine, Minsk, Belarus, and Warsaw, Poland all have more than 1.5 million people. Politics and economy. As with many other aspects of Eastern European life, Soviet rule has had a long-lasting impact on politics and the economy. Under communism, production for the country was controlled entirely by the government. During this time, Eastern Europe became increasingly industrialized, which in some ways advanced the region. However, communism also brought an authoritarian government. Not good for human rights. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe has struggled to transition to a democratic form of government and move towards having more aspects of a market economy, or an economy based on supply and demand rather than government control. Some countries have adjusted better than others. For instance, the three Baltic states and Poland rank highly on the world indices which measure freedom in terms of politics and civil liberties. On the other hand, Russia, Belarus, and Azerbaijan all have very low rankings in terms of political freedom due to concerns over media control and election manipulation. Russia has also drawn criticism for their desire to expand their borders beyond their cramped quarters of 6.6 million square miles. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, a Ukrainian peninsula on the Black Sea with a high number of ethnic Russians. While Russia has control of Crimea, the annexation has not been recognized as legal by the world community. Overall, Eastern European nations have a vastly lower GDP per capita than the European Union average of about $34,000 per year. 6 of these countries have per capita GDPs lower than $10,000. Ukraine in particular is experiencing challenges. The average Ukrainian yearly salary is around $6,000, compared to about $50,000 in the U.S. Along with Ukraine, Georgia and Armenia are also heavily agriculture dependent. Nearly 17% of Armenia's economy is driven by farming, the highest in Europe and almost 3 times the world average. One of the highest GDPs per capita in Eastern Europe belongs to Estonia at nearly $25,000. One reason: Estonia is electric. You know, that sounds like it could be a great marketing campaign. By using local oil shale or sedimentary rocks used for energy, Estonia produces mass amounts of electricity for itself and neighboring countries. Sadly, while electric energy is brightening Estonia, radioactive energy is bringing down Belarus. Chernobyl was a nuclear power plant in Ukraine, close to the Belarus border. In 1986, there was an explosion that released radioactive materials into the air, leaving affected areas completely abandoned. 70% of the fallout landed in Belarus, contaminating a quarter of the country and 1/5 of its farmland. In 2016, it was estimated that this disaster continued to cost Belarus 20% of its annual budget. Overall, the Eastern European economy is experiencing some major challenges, but growth is projected. Cities such as Kiev, Ukraine, and Yerevan, Armenia, are becoming hotbeds for technology development. Additionally, Poland has emerged from a difficult 20th century with a highly skilled workforce, pointing the Poles in the right direction. There will still be some bumps in the road for Eastern Europe, but there is reason for hope. Culture. Beautiful town squares, squat dances, meat nestled in a pocket of boiled dough, 200-degree rooms. Intrigued by Eastern European culture yet? We'll get to the good stuff soon enough, but let's start with the basics. Eastern Europe is dominated by the Slavic ethno-linguistic group. Slavs are the largest such group in Europe, and they include speakers of Russian, Ukrainian, and Polish. Russian, the largest Slavic language, is still widely spoken in many of these countries as a result of Soviet-era influence. An exception to Slav centrism in Eastern Europe is Transcaucasia, an extremely diverse region. Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan all have unique languages not related to the Slavic language group. Christianity is the most popular religion in Eastern Europe, with Eastern Orthodoxy being the most popular denomination. Some countries, such as Poland, are Catholic, while Latvia is Lutheran, and then Azerbaijan is 95% Muslim. One common thread through many of these countries is a relative lack of religious engagement, a trend that is increasing among European countries. In 7 of these 10 countries, 50% or fewer of its residents view religion as an important part of their everyday lives. At 16%, Estonia is the lowest in the world. As mentioned before, this region had quite a bit of its history and culture stifled due to the communist Soviet regime, which repressed individual expression. However, when you visit today, you can enjoy each country's free expression of their unique culture. In the Baltic states, the singing of folk songs is a popular tradition. Children begin to sing and dance in cultural festivals at an early age. In Russia and Ukraine, you don't need to go to the gym when you can just dance. Participants in squat dancing execute a series of intense rhythmic kicks while in the squat position. That's one way to warm up in the cold weather. Speaking of the cold, well, if that's what you've got, then you figure out a way to work with it. Winter sports play a major role in some Eastern European countries. Russia is an ice hockey hotbed, with many of its players reaching the National Hockey League. Due to the cold climate, cross-country skiing is quite popular in countries such as Estonia, after which participants will warm up in a hot sauna, where temperatures reach 200 degrees. If you go to Poland, be prepared to stuff yourself with an array of delicious food, some of which you may need to be convinced to try. The kielbasa and pierogi, the meat pockets, are easy to love, but how about bigos, hunter's stew, which is chopped meat with a hot sauerkraut and cabbage? Now, don't knock it till you've tried it. And if you go to Ukraine and have a few weeks to spare, try to get invited to a traditional Ukrainian wedding. Yes, weeks. A Ukrainian wedding can last for weeks at a time and involve a series of meals and festivals to which the entire community is invited. Speaking of meals, what countries do you think of when you see a bottle of delicious red wine being poured with dinner? France? Italy? Nope. To visit the birthplace of this bewitching beverage, you need to go to, that's right, Transcaucasia. Yes, Armenia and Georgia are considered the cradle of wine, where their viticultural history dates back thousands and thousands of years. Yes, there is plenty to be excited about when you visit Eastern Europe. Although this region has had a challenging history and is experiencing some current economic struggles, there are reasons for optimism. Until next time, do svidaniya, and keep exploring.
Hey, hey.